Mystery of time.
Time is strange. We all feel it, but nobody really understands it. When we are children, summers feel endless. A single day can feel like a week. But as we grow older, decades seem to vanish in the blink of an eye. Where does the time go? Why does it speed up as we age? This is not just a feeling. It is a deep, universal phenomenon that has puzzled philosophers, psychologists, and physicists alike. Among the thinkers who wrestled with the enigma of time was Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist. Feynman's approach was not just theoretical. He wanted to understand time as it is experienced, not just as equations on a blackboard.
Feynman often warned that our intuitions about the world can be misleading. When it comes to time, this warning is especially true. We assume that time is constant, that it ticks away uniformly, like the hands of a clock. But as we age, our perception of those ticks changes. A year when you are 5 feels eternal. A year when you are 50 feels fleeting. Feynman saw this as a clue to something deeper, a connection between memory, experience, and the way our brains encode the passage of time. The childhood illusion. When we are young, everything is new. Every sensation, every sound, every sight is unfamiliar. The brain is busy absorbing and encoding enormous amounts of information. Novelty stretches time. Each experience is like a story. And the more stories, the longer the timeline feels. Think about your first day at school, your first bicycle ride, or your first vacation. Those events feel expansive in memory because each one is heavily imprinted. Feynman explained that time, in a sense, is tied to memory. The richer the memory, the slower the perceived passage of time. Childhood is packed with memories because almost everything is experienced for the first time. That is why summers feel like they last forever. The brain is actively building a dense web of experiences. But as we grow older, the brain encounters fewer firsts. Life becomes routine. The same route to work, the same faces, the same tasks. When experiences are repeated, the brain compresses them. Feynman suggested that this compression is like skipping over familiar pages in a book. Days and weeks blur together. The result, time feels like it is accelerating. Feynman's thought experiment. Feynman loved thought experiments. He would ask, imagine 2 people, one 5 years old and one 50 years old, both experiencing a year. The child perceives a year as 1/5 of their life, an enormous span. For the 50-year-old, the same year is just 1/50th, a tiny fraction. Simply put, as we age, each year becomes proportionally smaller relative to our life experience. This simple ratio explains much of why time feels faster, but not everything. There's another layer. Feynman noticed that time is not just measured by clocks, but by change. A day packed with activity feels long, while a day of waiting feels short. This is why holidays seem to fly by as adults. Even if we are physically present, our minds are less engaged. Familiar routines provide less novelty, and less novelty is coded as less time.
Memory, dopamine, and perception.
Modern neuroscience confirms what Feynman intuited. The brain's dopamine system plays a central role in how we perceive time. Dopamine signals surprise and novelty. When dopamine spikes, time stretches. When it is low, time contracts. Children experience constant novelty, so their dopamine levels respond more dynamically. Adults experience routine, so the signals are muted. This creates the sensation that life is accelerating, even though physical clocks tick at the same rate. Feynman also pointed out the emotional factor. Fear, excitement, and anticipation all slow down perceived time. Children encounter these emotions frequently: new challenges, social anxieties, thrilling discoveries. Adults habituated to life's rhythms experience fewer of these intense emotional spikes. Their subjective time speeds up.
The paradox of retrospection.
Interestingly, the acceleration of time is most noticeable in retrospect. When looking back at the past, adults feel that years vanished quickly. But in the moment, time may still feel normal or even slow if something unusual occurs. Feynman's disturbing insight was that the very act of memory changes our perception. The more memories we store, the denser the past becomes. Yet ironically, a routine life stores fewer memorable events, compressing the subjective timeline. In essence, our life experience is like a rubber band. Childhood stretches it. Adulthood compresses it. The older we get, the more compressed the timeline appears, until life itself feels as though it is racing past.
The science behind the acceleration.
Feynman always insisted that understanding the world requires both curiosity and careful observation. The mystery of why time speeds up as we age isn't just philosophical. It has measurable scientific roots. From neuroscience to physics, multiple layers explain why our subjective experience of time diverges from the steady ticking of clocks. The brain's timekeeper. One of the key mechanisms Feynman hinted at involves how the brain measures time internally. Unlike clocks, our brains do not have a single master timer. Instead, multiple neural systems track durations and intervals. Among these, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a small region in the hypothalamus, regulates circadian rhythms, influencing sleep-wake cycles and the perception of longer periods. More importantly, the basal ganglia and cerebellum handle short-term timing and rhythm. They allow us to estimate seconds and minutes. But these systems rely heavily on dopamine, the neurotransmitter linked to reward and novelty. When dopamine signaling is strong, time seems to expand. When it is weak, time contracts. This is why children whose dopamine responses are high due to constant novelty feel that time drags, while adults in routine experience the opposite. The relative nature of time. Feynman's fascination with physics offered another perspective. Time is not absolute, it is relative. Einstein's theory of relativity shows that time slows down in strong gravitational fields and speeds up for objects moving at high velocity. While these effects are imperceptible in daily life, they reveal a deeper truth. Time is flexible, not fixed. Feynman's disturbing discovery was to consider relativity alongside human perception. If time can bend and stretch in the physical universe, why should our subjective sense of time remain constant? Our brains may unconsciously compress familiar events and stretch new ones, creating a personal form of relativity.
The proportional theory.
Psychologists have formalized what Feynman intuitively understood as the proportional theory of time perception. Simply put, each year represents a smaller fraction of our total life as we age. For a 5-year-old, a single year is 20% of life, a huge span. For a 50-year-old, a single year is only 2%. This proportional shrinking makes each year feel shorter, even though clocks continue to tick at the same rate. Feynman extended this idea in a thought experiment. Imagine a person living to 100 years. By the time they reach 50, each subsequent decade represents an increasingly smaller slice of their experience. The passage of time doesn't literally accelerate, but the mind compresses it. Adults look back and feel that life is speeding by because each period contains fewer novel events relative to the total lifetime. Memory density and life compression. Memory plays a central role. Feynman observed that the density of stored experiences shapes our perception of time. Childhood is packed with first steps, first words, first friends. Each event creates a unique neural imprint. In adulthood, most experiences are repetitive. The brain consolidates repeated events, storing them in compressed formats. Days, months, and years blur together. Studies confirm this. Researchers have shown that adults recall fewer specific memories per year than children. Novel experiences form episodic memories, while routine events are stored in a generic semantic format. Less episodic content means less subjective time. When we reflect, these memories are the markers that stretch our perception of life. With fewer markers, time feels shorter. The role of attention. If attention further amplifies the effect, Feynman noted that children are constantly alert to details. Every sound, sight, and sensation is processed actively. Adults accustomed to their environments filter out much of the sensory input. The same hour can feel like minutes if the mind is disengaged. Mindfulness, novelty, or high stimulation activities can temporarily slow subjective time, mimicking the childhood experience.
You're functional with them?
Emotion intensifies time perception. Feynman often emphasized that our inner experiences shape reality. Fear, joy, and anticipation can make moments feel prolonged. Conversely, boredom or monotony compresses time. This explains why stressful, exciting events during adulthood like travel, love, or life-changing experiences temporarily slow down our perception, even as years outside these events seem to accelerate.
Feynman's warning, life's unseen speed.
The disturbing truth Feynman wanted to convey is not just scientific, it is existential. If time is perceived proportionally, routine accelerates the subjective passage of life. We can measure our years with calendars and clocks, but the mind compresses most of them. By midlife, decades seem to vanish before our eyes. Most people reach their later years surprised by how quickly time passed.
Feynman suggested a simple yet profound remedy. Embrace novelty. Seek new experiences. Challenge your assumptions and remain curious. The mind records more, attention remains active, and life feels longer. Not because the clock slows, but because the brain stores richer memories.
Slowing down life without stopping it.
Feynman's disturbing insight left a clear challenge. As we age, life seems to speed up. But it doesn't have to feel that way. The acceleration of subjective time is not a law of nature. It is a consequence of how the brain encodes experiences. By understanding the mechanics of perception, memory, and attention, we can take control of the way we experience life.
Embrace novelty.
The simplest remedy is to prioritize novelty. Childhood feels long because it is filled with first experiences. Adults can simulate this effect by actively seeking new experiences, travel to unfamiliar places, learn new skills, explore different social circles. The brain responds to novelty by boosting dopamine, stretching subjective time. Feynman argued that curiosity is a tool not just for learning, but for living more fully. Each new skill or challenge becomes a marker in memory, making life feel longer in retrospect. Mindfulness and attention. Attention is another lever. Feynman often stressed observation as a form of engagement with reality. When we consciously focus on the present, we process more details and encode richer memories. Mindfulness practices, meditation, or simply slowing down daily activities allow us to live fully in each moment. A walk in the park, a meal, or a conversation can feel longer and more meaningful when observed attentively.
Breaking routines.
Routine compresses time. Adults experience fewer novel memories because most days are repetitive. To counteract this, Feynman suggested periodically breaking patterns. Change your route to work, try a new hobby, or challenge your assumptions. Even small deviations from routine create memorable events. Over time, these markers stretch the subjective timeline.
Emotional intensity.
Feynman understood the role of emotion in perception. Intense experiences, both positive and negative, slow down perceived time. Fear, awe, love, and excitement heighten attention and memory encoding. Adults often underestimate this factor, avoiding discomfort or novelty. Ironically, stepping out of comfort zones and embracing meaningful challenges can extend subjective time more than passive leisure. The role of reflection. Looking back is where the acceleration becomes most noticeable. Feynman emphasized retrospection. If life is densely packed with memorable events, time feels longer in memory. Journaling, photography, or creative projects help preserve experiences. Memory, like a rubber stamp, leaves permanent marks that slow the perception of time when reviewed.
Philosophical implications.
Feynman's discovery also forces us to confront the nature of existence. Life is finite, and its apparent speed is largely shaped by our choices. By cultivating curiosity, attention, and novelty, we are not changing objective time, but we are shaping our subjective reality. Every person has the capacity to stretch their lived experience, making decades feel fuller and richer. At the same time, Feynman's insight is humbling. No matter how much we try to slow subjective time, it will never stop. Aging, memory consolidation, and physiological changes inevitably compress life. The key is awareness. By understanding how perception works, we can make conscious choices to live more fully and leave fewer moments unrecorded in memory.
Feynman's final lesson.
In the end, Feynman's message is both scientific and deeply human. Time is not a constant we can control. It is a phenomenon deeply intertwined with experience, attention, and memory. Life speeds up because we stop noticing the details. Life feels long when we remain curious, engaged, and emotionally present.
Feynman's disturbing discovery is ultimately empowering. By understanding the mechanisms of perception, we are not victims of time. We are its co-creators. Every novel experience, every act of attentiveness, and every emotional engagement is a brushstroke on the canvas of a life that, despite chronological speed, can feel expansive, rich, and profound.
The paradox is clear. Time will always move forward, but how it feels is entirely in our hands. Embrace curiosity, challenge routine, and pay attention. That is the Feynman way of stretching a life that might otherwise vanish in the blink of an eye.